Cameras are on.
Oh, oh. Just kidding. And my obnoxious music.
Nine-year-old was saying, okay, so we need to have prime rib for dinner and then have ice cream after dinner. I'm like, what? You'll be fine. The rest of the day, you'll be fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. No problem. Just
Are you ready to pass anything down?
thank you.
It's looking good. That's the style these days.
Yeah, you should see my 17-year-old thing is fluffing.
You're not. Are you ready? Yes, I'm ready.
Ready?
Good evening. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Huron School Board for February 21st. Mrs. Hartley,
Present.
Mrs. Henners,
Here.
Dr. LeFay,
Here.
Mrs. Mast,
Here?
Mr. Jones. Here. Please join us in pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. We need a motion to approve the agenda for February 21st, 2023.
So moved?
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. DeMarco. Mrs. Mast,
Yes.
Mrs. Henners,
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Dr. LeFay,
Yes.
Mr. Jones. Yes. Thank you again. Item 3 is audience community participation. Please keep in mind that each person addressing the board would be allotted 5 minutes, and we've allotted a total of 30 minutes during those presentations. During that period, no person may speak twice until all who desire to speak have had the opportunity to do so. And a period of public participation may be extended by a vote of the majority of the board. Okay. First, I would like to invite up Mr. Jim Murray.
Good evening, members of the board and Mr. Superintendent, staff, and everyone else in attendance. My name is Jim Murray. I'm a proud Huron alum, Huron parent, and also an alum of the Firelands Montessori Academy. I just wanted to briefly reinitiate Firelands Montessori's interest in the Shawnee building. I know you'll be talking about that tonight. This is specifically around topic 9D, the sale disposition of Shawnee Elementary School. Just want to share again that Montessori is very interested, and that includes the potential purchase of the building. I know the school district is right now going through the due diligence, and it seems from the resolution that's before you tonight that's the school district's desires to actually liquidate and sell the property. With that said, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things from the specific resolution that's up on the board's website. Specifically under number 5, under rationale, it says there are no community schools, STEM schools, or college preparatory boarding schools within the territory of the district, so the board is not required to offer the property to the governing body of any of these entities. And my understanding is Firelands Montessori does not meet the formal qualifications of that, but I also want to share that in a more informal way, we do believe that Firelands Montessori Academy is an important community school that's been in this area for 4 decades. The next piece I just wanted to bring to your attention is under the section that starts the Huron City School District Board of Education resolves as follows, and particularly under number 4 near the end, it talks about engaging an auctioneer and negotiating the terms of a private sale as may be permitted by law to dispose of the property. I don't know what process you'll be taking forth, whether it's kind of a public sale, public auction, or receiving kind of bids in a more private manner. But again, all we ask is that Firelands Montessori be included and have an opportunity to bid. And I'll just close by saying, this entire property and the entire Shawnee school, took probably millions of dollars of taxpayer funding for the purpose of education. And I know obviously the school board and the district is going to do everything they can to recuperate and be able to utilize those funds for something else. But I would just say it would be such a shame to tear down this facility when it might have additional years for, again, kind of a community school and an asset like Firelands Montessori. And again, I'll just throw out that we want to be as flexible as possible. And that's whether the school district offices, whether that's other uses that the district might have in the building, whether Montessori owns it or continues in some other form like a lease. But I just want to share that Firelands Montessori Academy, FMA, is very interested in the potential acquisition and purchase of the property, and we just look forward to any opportunity that avails itself. Thank you.
Jennifer Lenzik.
Good morning, board members. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak and for your consideration. I do not have all the credentials you have, but I do have very significant credentials. MOM. I live by the truths: love God, family first, tell the truth, work hard, and be kind to people. We entrust our children to your care the majority of the day, more so if they choose to participate in sports or extracurricular activities. You have great influence over our children, an influence that they will carry with them a lifetime. My father is 87 years old and still speaks at every opportunity about his glory days in high school playing football. Throughout this swim season, myself and other parents have brought many concerns to your attention. In fact, I was once told by Principal Lamb we have a zero tolerance policy. What does zero tolerance actually mean? Other than a slogan phrase, I've personally not experienced the carrying out of this policy referenced in the Huron Student Manual in all of my dealings with the school. In fact, the opposite. Coaches and other staff associated with your administration have bullied, intimidated, and essentially groomed these children and parents, which has been well documented. What will these children speak of when they talk about their glory days? As we come to a close of this swim season and the end of many of these athletes' high school experiences in sports, I wonder what we have taught these children. Will they choose to participate in sports or extracurricular activities, or will they sit on the sidelines where it is safer? Will they stand up for themselves and for other teammates, or will they be silenced? I hope I have taught my children well. Please be mindful of your actions and who you entrust our children to. You have great influence on our future and what these children carry with them for a lifetime. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Chief Graham?
Mr. President, members of the school board, Mr. Tapman, I just want to take this opportunity to introduce myself to the board. Although I know some, I don't know you all. I was recently promoted to the Chief of Police for the Huron Police Department. It's a position that I don't take lightly. My passion for the position is unmeasurable. Very excited. I'm honored. And I'm humbled for this opportunity. I'm 50-year resident of the city of Huron, live in Huron, graduated from Huron. All my kids went to Huron. I am Huron, and I am proud to represent the police department. And I just wanted to extend this opportunity for the board, the school board, that if there's anything that we can do, we embrace and enjoy the opportunity to provide school security, safety, assessments, our presence at arrival and dismissals, assistance with special events and ball games, and whatever we can do. So my door is open to all of you. If you ever need anything, I've already taken the opportunity to meet with Mr. Tapman and make sure that we're share the same vision, which we do. And I'm proud to be here before you, and I know the hard job that you have to do, and we have one too. And so anything that we can do, I greatly would extend the opportunity for you to contact me at any time. Thank you.
For talking with us. Next up is item 4, Dr. Tapman.
All right, so we're moving to administrative reports. The first is, Huron City Schools, we value partnerships, community partnerships, and there are some key partnerships or organizations that help us be successful in the classroom and beyond. And so tonight I asked the PTO executive board to come and just provide an update on activities that have happened this year, stuff yet to come, and all that. So the floor is yours, ladies.
Thank you so much for letting us come to present and share with you everything the PTO is working on. My name is Jessica Melching, and I'm the president of the PTO. I'm here with Susie Kudrin, who's the vice president, Ashley Misnick, who is our treasurer, Missy Reinhart is our recording secretary, and Casey Sparks is our social media secretary. And we would like to share everything we've done so far this year with you. Thank you. Sorry. We are going to talk first about things that we have done this school year. This agenda looks really long. I promise you we're not going to take that long. It's pretty quick. The first thing that we have done this school year is Dine with Domino's. So this is something we've done for years. We do it the fourth Tuesday of every month. So anyone who orders Domino's at all, the whole day, lunch or dinner, we get 10%. We get 10% of the sales. The past few years, it's been around 200, and this year we've gotten 300 to 400 every month. So it's a huge money maker for us. That money used to be used directly to go towards the playground at Woodlands. Now that we have that, it's just kind of coming in our account, and we're going to talk about what we use that money for.
So another event that we coordinated this year was Chalk the Walk. And we had a bunch of parents and sometimes students come to all the locations of the schools to chalk up for the first day of school. So they had welcome signs, smile signs everywhere so that when the students walked into school, they saw that we had spent the time to bring a little cheer to the first day. So it went over well. We got lots of compliments from the parents who noticed it as they were dropping their kids off, or all the high school kids that were walking in. So it was a really good opportunity for us to show, how much we appreciate our students and all the hard work that goes into having to go to school every day. So the Woodlands Book Fair was in the fall, and we made $3,000 and some change in scholastic dollars. Thank you. And then we also took home $1,000 of cash, and so we still have $3,000 to spend for the new library that we'll eventually have to rearrange and redo when the schools combine. So there's going to be another presentation on the Shawnee Book Fair, and once we get to that point, I'll tell you kind of what our idea is to on what we're going to use those funds for. But the main thing is, for the Woodlands Book Fair, we were able to purchase all of the teacher wish list items and all of the library requests with the scholarship dollar or the scholastic dollars that we had, and then we still had $3,000 left over. So there's still monies to be spent to be used towards those endeavors.
All right. We used to do Grandparents' Day, and we changed it to Donuts with Grown-Ups this year because not everybody has grandparents. So we come up with this fun, fancy name. And at Woodlands, we did it in the fall, the same week as Book Fair, on Wednesday, and we had a lovely lady coordinate it all, and she did 4 stations, so they weren't all crammed in their classrooms for extended amount of time. So one station was donuts, one station was a book fair, one station was a photo booth, and one station was in the classroom. And we got a lot of good feedback from 3rd and 4th grade. We've never done it for 5th and 6th, but it's not completely off the table. We've had some interest in parents wanting one. We just haven't had anybody to coordinate one. So that was our fun day of Donuts with Grown-Ups at Woodlands.
Another thing the PTO does is we coordinate conference meals for the teachers at Shawnee and Woodlands. So in the fall, for conferences at Woodlands, we had a volunteer take that on, and she was able to get food from Jim's Pizza Box one night and Berardi's the next. Shawnee in the fall, we did Olive Garden and Domino's. And then for the spring for Shawnee, we had, again, really great volunteers who kind of spearheaded this. They did sub trays, fruit trays, veggie trays, and then they also did Zupaman meals one night. And for Woodlands, again, we did Olive Garden and Domino's because it fell on Dine with Domino's night. So,
So our fall fundraiser was country meat sticks. Okay, these went over like crazy last year. But so we brought them back. They're great. I have one for each of you if you'd like one. You will hear me as meat stick lady because I brought it on.
I get to take it on. So we made we made almost $3,000 this year on week 6. Last year we made almost 5,000 on them. So they did go up in price. They went from $1 last year to $1.50 this year. So, but we made almost $3,000 in week 6. Who can say that they made $3,000 in week 6? I can.
Please. Thank you.
Right. One other thing that we do is we also put on the holiday shop at both schools. So we take a week, we set up a shop. We use a company called Penguin Patch. They send us a bunch of items. The kids can come in, buy gifts for all of their family members, parents, siblings, grandparents. This year, from the holiday shops, we were able to earn $2,254 for the PTO through those shops. And thinking of next year, we are taking this on our own. So instead of using an outside company, we are purchasing items to sell a little bit better quality item, a little less, they're cheaper products. So we just weren't really happy this year with the products that they sent us. So changes and the pricing, correct. All right.
Okay, one more thing we did was our PTO Christmas party this year. This was new. This was the first year for PTO we've actually had members. So this year we said if you come to 2 meetings and you volunteer at one event, you will be an actual PTO member, meaning you can come to the Christmas party, which we painted these awesome signs. It was a lot of fun. We went to Hearth and Home in Berlin Heights. So those were our members at that time. So yeah, this was a first year thing, and we will in April is volunteer month, so we will celebrate our members again. They'll get a cool PTO shirt then.
So this is the Shawnee Book Fair. Again, we were able to purchase all of the teacher wish lists, all the library wish lists, and then there was even a couple of books that our amazing principal wanted. So we did those as well. We were able to earn over $4,000 in Scholastic dollars, which since Shawnee is closing, we decided to cash those in. So we have $1,977.84 that we got to bring into the PTO. Our thought process, since we have so many dollars within Scholastic at Woodlands and then also cash, we would like to allow our new library area to be redone and have like a nook for kids to read and things like that. So that is what our board plans to do with those dollars, is kind of give them back to our librarian and see kind of what her wish is on how the library will run and what we can do to help make that happen.
Just recently did donuts with grown-ups at Shawnee. We did pre-K through 2nd, and we only had 3 stations this time. We did a classroom, and in the classroom they did like a donut craft, and then they got to do the book fair, and they got to have donuts with their grown-ups. And then we had the photo booth, but it was set up so like as you went in to get your donuts, you stopped and got your picture taken and kind of moved on and sat down. It was what they loved it. So I know it like almost tripled our Scholastic sales for Shawnee, since they've never been able to go to the book fair with them before. We've only allowed our Woodland students to go, but it was very well received. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what we still have to do this year. We still have quite a bit this year. I know it sounds like we've made a ton of money. We keep throwing these numbers off to you, but because of COVID, our bank account was very low. So this year we kind of use as a rebuilding year to try to get those funds back up. And then we'll share with you 2 ways we're going to spend that money. We have a fundraiser starting next week,
March 1st is our Mally's chocolate bar fundraiser. We've done this for years. They used to do a big Easter sale. Now they just do the candy bars. Last year we made about $3,000 on this fundraiser, just selling each candy bar is $2. So you will see those hopefully coming home next week. And there you get here before Easter. They're perfect for your Easter basket.
We also have a new event that we're going to try out this year is the Tiger Tots resale shop. Kind of further east of here, this is a big thing that a lot of PTOs do. They allow parents to purchase kind of a lot where they can bring all their kids stuff that they want to sell rather than having a garage sale. It's kind of a guaranteed location. You don't have to worry about weather. You don't have to worry about traffic or anything like that. They pay a fee for this little space, and then you charge people to come through the door. So that's how the PTO will kind of make money through that. And that will be April 22nd in the Woodlands Gym.
Okay, Staff Appreciation Week is May 1st through 5th, and this is one of our biggest expenses that we have through PTO. So in the past, we have done secretary appreciation, bus driver appreciation, all that. We said we're not doing any of that this year. We're doing one big week of staff appreciation. So everyone will get their things May 1st through 5th. We started last year, we started doing a theme. So last year we did a Friends theme. This year we are going to do the If You Give a Mouse a Cookie theme. So they will get, like one day we're going to try to do, if you give a teacher a vase, it will fill it with flowers and have all the kids bring a flower in. We'll also do, like, if you give the teacher a cookie, they'll want coffee to go with it. So we'll get them coffee and a cookie. So this is our biggest expense. Last year we doubled our budget, and I believe we still went over budget. This year we want to try to include McCormick and the high school in this. And I know I've talked to John and I've talked to Jody about maybe partnering with you guys this year instead of kind of you doing your thing and us doing our thing. So maybe we can make that possible, and we can make sure all of our teachers know how much we appreciate them.
All right. Shawnee Fun Day is coming up at the end of May. PTO helps provide things for this day. Like, we pay for a Zumba instructor to come and do one of the stations. We buy face paint. We purchase, usually it's those like push paps for all the students for a snack. And then we get the volunteers. And if Mrs. Skavnek needs chalk, we'll get her chalk. If she needs wipes or napkins or whatever she needs, she tells us, we get it. And she plans all the stations. We get the volunteers, the food, and they have a great time.
For kindergarten graduation, we always purchase the tassels for our kindergartners that go on their hats so that they can take those tassels home and they can keep them. This year we will be buying the tassels, and we're also getting the little butterfly for Evelyn put on every single tassel as well. So the kindergartners will get to take those home with them.
Kindergarten screening. I did the kindergarten screening this past year. It was really fun. My son's in one of these pictures. He's down up the lower one. So, yeah, we had a ton of fun with this. The parents loved it. We have this huge pencil that the kids get to write their name as a new student from kindergarten, and they do this right before they're going in to kind of get tested, which we found that doing this little exercise before they have to go and do that kind of calms their nerves and gets them excited for meeting the teachers and all that. So, and plus, you know, we have a lot of support during that too from the principal and all that. So, it was a really fun day. The kids loved it. We had some really great pictures.
PTO also sponsors a senior scholarship. We do a minimum of one $500 scholarship based on their community hours, and they write it. They give us, they let us know each student if they're applying for the scholarship, how many community hours they have or volunteer hours, and they also write an essay on what being a member of the community and volunteering means to them. Last year we actually gave 3 $500 scholarships, so we always just say a minimum of 1, but there's usually more.
So high school graduation, there's a couple things going on this year. One, we're trying to sponsor a senior again. I don't know if you recall, last year we had little baskets for all of our graduating seniors that had little trinkets in it, like a picture frame, a blanket, a cup that had Huron on it or something like that. It's usually about $60 per senior, and we've been trying to raise money to go towards that. One of the events that we did was at the Riverfest. I don't know if you remember me at the Riverfest. I was selling 50-50 tickets, and we made $449 from doing that. I spent $100 on the tickets, but we still, I know, we still were able to raise, $400 for that. And I'm sure with all of our other endeavors, we'll hopefully be able to do that. But we'll most likely post something on Facebook too about sponsoring a senior, and hopefully getting some community help for that, because $60 a senior times however many seniors is quite a lot of money. So, but we do love doing it. We get lots of volunteers, and we kind of have like a little train of things that we do together. So each person has what they have to put in the box. So, and then the other thing that we're doing for high school graduation is for Caleb. I don't know if you recall, but he would be graduating this year. And so one of our ideas is to have a tassel with his picture on it for each of the graduating seniors. And then we're trying to get approved for him to have a chair with a gown and hat as well. So just making sure that that family knows that we're thinking about them, and we realize what this monumental moment would have been for them. So,
If you don't, it's Caleb Parsons.
yeah.
He passed away in 2nd grade from sepsis.
Yes. He would have been graduating.
And finally, is our first ever 5K. We are being part of the We Run This Town 5K series. So anybody who participates in those, if you run so many races, you kind of get a special medal or sweatshirt. It's going to be September 16th. We're running from the high school down to Woodlands, and then it will end at the high school. We're going to make it a evening time. It's going to be a glow run. So the run is actually in the daytime, right before sunset, and then once everybody gets back, there'll be like a kids fun run, and then a big glow party for everybody. So we're really looking forward to that. I think that's it. Thank you again so much for letting us share with you everything we're doing. That's all we've got. That's it.
I would like to add one more just thing. I apologize because I actually was supposed to be meeting tonight. I had another public meeting that I just came from. But obviously we covered a lot of items on here, and this is done. And like Susie said, we actually had no members as of last year, so this was all done by like most of these ladies. I actually just come in and help when I can. But if you do know of families that are looking for things to volunteer for or want to get involved in the I would encourage you to pass them along to this organization. This does a lot of activities for all of our children, and they do.
Thank you all so very much. Somebody's gonna follow them.
Thank you, PTO, for presenting. Definitely, PTO makes an impact for our students and our families, and helps us, deliver beyond just the content standards and learning instruction, but really makes it a quality experience for our students in the classroom and beyond. So thank you, guys. So next we have our monthly building or department presentation. So tonight is McCormick. So I'll turn it over to Chad, who's going to introduce the presenters.
We're following them, so
Hard act.
it is a great organization. Thanks for having us tonight. So tonight with me I have Miss LaCrosse, if you want to come up, Mrs. Dunn, and then we also brought a student with us, Nathan, 8th grade student Nathan Porterfield. So when Dr. Tapman asked us to each do a little presentation each month to highlight some areas in our building, there's a lot to be proud of at McCormick, but the one that sort of stands out in my mind is just the enthusiasm that students have going to, whether it's 7th grade, 8th grade science, or to our PLTW classroom, which is primarily for 7th graders. However, Miss Dunn also has a couple sections of 8th grade and students for Project Lead the Way courses as well. So Project Lead the Way, for those that don't know, is a nationally organized or recognized organization, a STEM organization that we brought into the school district in the 16-17 school year. So previous to Miss Dunn being here for the last 2 years, we were fortunate enough to have Mary James. So she built the program, brought some excitement to it, and then sort of passed the torch off to Taylor, who's going to speak to tonight just about the background of PLTW, her new course that she has coming up with Flight and Space, and then speak briefly about some newly acquired drones that she has. And then Miss LaCrosse joined us in the 14-15 school year when Mr. Coosfeld left us to be Shawnee principal. And she's going to talk to us tonight about the use of technology in her classroom, mainly some 3D printing. And I do want to highlight that when I was at her desk the other day, she has a little post-it note of some incoming grants that she has received this year. And I totaled them up, and Miss LaCrosse's grand total for this year is $10,700. So thank you for bringing that to our district. So I'm going to hand it off to Taylor first, and then we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm Taylor Dunn. So with PLTW, a couple of different courses that I teach. The first one, mainly for all 7th graders, they get me at some point, they can't get away from me, is design and modeling, which is basically a lot of just engineering principles, basics, learning the design process. And then my 8th grade course that I have is automation robotics. So we build off of the engineering design process, and then we're able to build different things, explore different technologies, like drones. Currently, we are looking at that, and thanks to Leah, she sent me a little giveaway for me to receive 6 new drones, which is awesome. And they all work for right now, which is great. They haven't ran into the wall enough yet for them to not work. And then I'll also be able to use those drones when I teach Flight and Space this coming quarter, which is a new course that I have. Last year, I received a grant from ARDA, which allowed me to add a new course offering here. So I'm excited to implement that for the first time. I'm learning how to do that right now. And then, so hopefully with the rest of this school year and the next school year, I can use that grant for new technologies, new supplies, and just getting the kids exposed to different technologies. Like Leah is going to talk about 3D printing, but she gave me some of those, and the kids are really, really excited about that. So I'm going to let her talk to you about all the 3D stuff that she's doing.
The 3D printing that happens, mouse. There we go. We actually started 3D printing back in 2015. Josh Hapley had extra funds from selling concession stand stuff, and he bought a Dremel 3D printer for use in the building. And so a lot of the first things that we did were just like modeling toys and like printing toys, because we did all of the funding for the grants. Huron has paid for a couple of printers, but from NASA to GE to Toshiba and Shell Science, like anytime I get funds, I'm looking for ways to bring 3D printing in. It's a great way to encourage design thinking. Taylor mentioned like getting our kids to think about like how to go through the design thinking process. And with a 3D printer, we really emphasize starting with empathy, not just printing plastic toys anymore, like more like printing for a purpose. So we're working with math, engineering, we're looking at SEL, like our persistence with our students, confidence, pride, and all of the other like cross-curricular things we can put in there. It seems like we just have 3D printers printing stuff, but all of this goes into the front end of it. We have replacement parts for water fountains. We've replaced skeleton parts in my classroom. We've made manipulatives for students who couldn't hold on to pencils so that they could attach a plastic part to their hand and they could write with manipulatives that way. We've worked with science materials, like it just keeps going. We replaced the curtain rollers over at McCormick. I don't know if anybody knows. People. Because apparently they don't make the rollers anymore, which seems about right. It's pretty old. But what I wanted to do is really turn it over to Nathan, because Nathan is one of the students, I have one or two each year that really get the process and they see possibility in 3D printing. They're not just trying to make fidget spinners. So Nathan's going to share a little bit about the process he goes through, and I have a couple of samples of his work.
Snapped in the middle, and they don't make it anymore because it was made in like the 50s. Yep. Yep. And so I ended up getting all the measurements, and I made it into Tinkercad scale. And I test it out.
Immediately I was like, Nathan, did you make this? Because I cannot measure all of this, and I don't know what I'm doing. And so he ended up measuring every one of those holes, every one of those parts. And I think we have a little quick video showing it in the. Yes. So the part you're looking at, Nathan had to do all of those parts in the CAD software. And what we did was I broke it apart so you can see all the pieces that go into it. So every one of those shapes, he had to bring in, measure, then combine it, and then print it. And how many prototypes did you have?
I had like 2 or 3.
And for a student to be able to look at a piece like this and break it up into all the geometric shapes and then model it in software that is being used by high school and entry-level college students, it's pretty awesome. And to have that ability. And then the part that I didn't really stress is that Nathan also is like our print person. So I'll say, hey, there's some prints that need to be done. And during study hall, he goes in, he grabs the prints, he tosses them on the printer, he levels the beds. I mean, it's a great opportunity for a leadership skill, to show his math awareness, and other kids ask him for help all the time. So it's a great program to grow. And when you think of just 3D printing, you're like, oh, you're just making plastic pieces. Like, we're growing future engineers. So, like Nathan. So.
Wow, that's
And we'll take all of this for some of our cards. He's an NASA guy, and he wants all of that. Yeah, thank you. That's awesome.
Ms. LaCrosse?
Yeah.
Hands us down. You want to come back up here real quick? DeMarco wants to start presenting the award each year for the Grant Writer of the Year. So as I previously mentioned, you're 10,700. On the board, a award for Grant Writer of the Year. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Next time we'll have Nathan make it.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. Thanks. So.
Ready for C. You can.
Yes, Dr. McDonald?
That's really a tough act to follow. That is very neat, Nathan. Thank you for sharing that with us this evening. I have the next piece of our, I think, counting back, this is a 10-month-old conversation, if I count correctly. I want to update you on the track. As you will see, the proposal is later on for your action. So back the week of January 9th, the proposal was posted in various sites, including our website, for the resurfacing and the track project as a whole. We did have a pre-submittal meeting on January 19th. We did have a few folks attend. The weather was kind enough to show those individuals that showed up the drainage issues, so we couldn't have timed that better as it was nice and wet. The proposals were due into the district on February 2nd by 1 o'clock, and we did receive 2 of those. So then February 7th, we met with Sportsworks, Bricker and Eckler, and our in-house team to review those. We did have a few questions that we needed Sportsworks to follow up on with one of the proposals, and those items were answered in a satisfactory manner, so that the documents you'll see later on in the agenda were put together and that's submitted through Dr. Chapman on the 14th. So that's kind of all the timeline stuff, but just to go over the proposals for our audience members too. We had the base proposal, and that is for the track itself, the long jump and the high jump runways. And then we had 8 alternatives. The alternatives were not included in the base, but we wanted to see what kind of pricing we could get and see what all could be accomplished with the funds that we are using. So those alternates included work in the shot put and discus areas, the 8-foot tall security fence, the drainage for the long jump and pole vault area, an impermeable polyurethane track surface, a sandwich system track surface. Those are, if you will, you have mid-level and really high-end level tracks. In the base proposal was just a regular standard track, if you will. Then also alternate 7 comes into play a little later. That is for a paving grid, which I'll talk about. And then we also looked at on the visitor side, bleacher skirting. So with soccer up at the high school on the visitor side, when the ball goes awry, somebody's crawling under bleachers to get it. So we thought perhaps we could check into skirting to see if we could save our favorite ball boy from having to dig that out. So with that, the proposals came back that alternates 5 and 6 were the track surface difference for that mid-level and higher end market. We dismissed those right away based on price and the fact that the increase in price did not produce any longevity to the surface. So, and then the caveat to that was when it comes time for us to redo the spray part of the track in 5 to 7 years for maintenance, that price is also increased. So because it didn't gain us anything, we didn't feel like it was worth the expense, if you will. We also put to rest, we did not opt in for the shot put area, the discus cage, or the security fence because those are not impacting COVID mitigation. Those are strictly track items, if you will. So our ODE approval was based on COVID mitigation, and that really sincerely was the track in those items. So then the asphalt paving grid. This will be it's on the ask for you to approve. If it is not needed, we will get a deduct change order and it will come off the price. This is one of those items that we don't know if we need it until they actually start on the demolition work and when they get down to that asphalt. So it is linear feet that we are purchasing at the price in the proposal. And it locks us in at that price. So we thought that was important with supply issues and prices going up. We didn't want to come back to you for a change order in the other direction and say, hey, we need some more. So if that is the case that we do not need it, then that will be refunded in our favor. So And then we are also going to not opt in for the bleacher skirting. We just think for the price that came in, we can do better elsewhere with other things. So other projects for other times, if you will. So with that, seems like 10 months ago was a really long time, but we have worked with Mr. Camilla. We've communicated with the track coaches. The proposed vendor, the start date is April 24th. It provides little angst. We have some logistical issues. Those are all things that we can work through. The coaches have been very good. Their questions are spot on. We're getting them answers as we get answers. So there are 2 drying periods, curing periods in this scope of work. And so as we know, Mother Nature in the spring, we delayed it as long as we could without bumping into fall. So with those, we talked about graduation with PTO. Tim will be working with families because most likely it'll be an indoor graduation as we'll have heavy equipment out on the track. So the project completion date is the 15th of July. There's a 2-week window, so July 30th is the absolute deadline. But we're pretty confident with this group and this proposal and what they have going on that should not be an issue. Mother Nature cooperating. So, down in the business portion, that base proposal, the total is $575,000, $290, excuse me. The long jump drainage issue is $22,621. And that paving grid is $18,590. And again, if we don't need it, we will not get charged and it'll come back to us. So all good stuff. I think it's good anyway.
Staying with that. Moving forward with that. Sure. Mr. DeMarco.
Thank you. Earlier this month, I sent just a quick financial summary to the board. Various topics, some of them light, some of them very heavy. So I was going to update some of those things that I talked about in that letter. The ones that are related to the ongoing facility projects or future projects, I'm going to leave out of this part just because those will be covered later in the agenda. So the good news, this year we recognized that there's been a lack of identification for free and reduced lunch program. So we started the year around 19%. Historically, the district has been around 29%. So that number has increased this year to 27%. And we're taking some steps next year to help families get identified. We're going to give them more points of contact, try to get some more education out there why it's important to fill out that form, just because it does drive revenue for the district. It helps the families out, but it does drive revenue. And there's maybe more benefits than people know. So that's one of the good news. Also, our open enrollment net, as of today, we're positive 50 students. So when you take the open enrollment kids that come in, subtract the kids that leave the district, we're positive 50, which is a good sign. The district has been losing enrollment now for years, but it's not because our students are leaving to go somewhere else. It's just how our community is changing and we're aging out of the school system. Other good news, we did receive our first tax advance, and then this week we'll get our second advance. Richard Jeffrey does a really good job as county auditor. I just can't see how he could be any better at his job, with communication and getting that. He doesn't have to do that, and he gives that money out, and then he's doing a second round of it before our settlement. For us, that's really important because that's our biggest source of revenue. And we're just coming out of the lean times at the bottom part of our cash cycle, and it was great that he did that. We didn't have to cash in any of our securities, which we don't have a lot in securities, but it was nice to get through that low point of the school year financially. Also, I think I shared with some of the board members, but we are going to start using, maybe as early as the next board meeting, an enhanced version of board docs, which will allow for real-time like recording of votes that can also be broadcast. It'll give us options, and we're going to have to layer this in because it's technical. but we could delay our live stream, and we can edit the live stream before we post it. So over time, it's going to make board meetings more user-friendly, more accessible. And at the end, just click a button and it produces the minutes. Those become, I mean, those require a little bit of editing, but so I knew there was a better version of Board Docs. I knew it wasn't, and that's the thing. Like, we just didn't have access to the things that we thought it could do. The not great news. I mean, it's not horrible, but property values keep increasing in Huron. We're now at the 20 mil floor, which I don't want to get too heavy, but in short, going forward, the district won't, when property values go up, that doesn't mean more revenue for the district. We were already at the floor for class 2, so that's our biggest source of revenue, and that is, it's not going to stop increasing, but it's really going to slow. Also, when property values go up and student enrollment declines, at the state level, the funding we get from the state, they don't send us more money. They actually will start sending us less. Because it looks like per individual kid that we are more wealthy as a district. So it's something, there's going to be more of a burden on the local taxpayer going forward for revenue. So I'm starting to put together, I really want to come to the next board meeting with a pretty complete May forecast, even without all the data that I'll need, but to give the board a good look at what we're going to have to do over the next 12 to 18 months outside of facilities. So, you know, there's stuff looming. Right now, I just don't have all the data. There's, you know, what happens in the next few months is kind of important. But the earlier we can look at that, the better. So that's my goal, is to have that ready, or at least a shell of it. The revenue side is pretty easy projecting. Right now, it's the expenses. There's just too many unknowns going into the next year. So the 5-year forecast. I'm also, it's been a while since we've opened up and looked for quotes for our insurance, our property casualty, all the different insurance policies the school has. So I should have something ready by the next board meeting. The district used to be on the Ohio School Plan, which is great. If we could get back on that, but I prepared bid packets. I'm going to send them out to, there's not a lot of people that do this statewide. So right now we're using a broker who goes out and does it for us. I think we can get around paying that fee. Really, there's not that many places to look. So we're trying to save wherever it's possible to save. So that's all I have.
I have on there a Perry Pro update.
Oh, I apologize. In fact, this morning we finalized the Perry Pro contract. So the board will not need to take action. We're swapping out some machines. It's going to save us a little bit. I don't know what I do with it. We actually have the maps and stuff. Over time, though, because it's a 5-year contract, going into next year, we're going to implement the paper cut program is really where the savings will come. So I walked through with Perry Pro and with Lyle. We went through all the buildings, and we don't know exactly all the changes yet, but we mapped out where the machines should go. And the big ones are on wheels, so if we need to move them, we can move them. And we might have a little redundancy. You know, I've been looking at meter counts and things like that of where we're using, you know, kind of tied it to like the 6th graders that are moving to McCormick. So we'll have enough machines for sure in every building. And then going into year 2 and 3, we can start if we don't need as many, we can pull them away. But really the savings will come from that paper cut program, because we're not paying for the machines themselves. We're paying for the copies. So Perry Pro thing, they're going to start moving in the rest before the end of the school year, but then the actual paper cut starts next year.
Any questions?
Oh, so, Paul, when you're talking about an 12 to 18 month vision, am I right in that you're talking about possibilities for levy?
Yes. I don't want to, I mean, nobody in their right mind wants to do a levy. but I don't want to wait too long, just in case. So, around the time of the May 5-year forecast, we'll have a good look at what the next 18 months will look like. So, those plans need, you need a year out to start planning. So,
I've gotten some questions from the community members about, like it seemed like we desperately needed a levy before, and what are we planning on doing? And I think part of it was we had ESSER money come in, and part of it was we weren't sure what was going to happen with the buildings, and that's, being reformatted currently, and now saying is in the next 12, with the forecast of the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to have a really good handle on what that ask will be realistically.
right. And, what we don't want to do is do an operations levy and then go for facilities like a bond. And depending on what that project is, because we haven't even started to think about what that project is yet, if there's going to be a PI levy attached to that. And then at that point, as you're moving 3, 4, 5 years, you might need another operations levy again. So that's what we're trying to avoid, is to not go more than we have to or ask for more than we need. It's just hard with incomplete variables right now. I mean, how we dispose of Shawnee is important. What's going to happen with the board office, things like that. And we're just starting. So we have a lot of things moving at the same time. But, going back, I know it was right about the time I started where, a projected deficit was a $1.2 million surplus. So I can understand because of how that happens, especially with all the unknowns with the new funding formula and the ESSER money coming in. Also, if we just don't have school like we did during COVID, and we're not paying for subs, and we're not paying for, we paid out the teacher contracts, we paid out all the supplementals, but and that's really not an option though, of keeping kids home. So, COVID was horrible. I would never want to go through it again, but at least it gave the district a chance to pause and then realign everything, financials with the facilities, with other things. So that's where we're at right now. It's a lot of things going at once.
All right, well, good evening. The night's getting long, so I'll just talk about a couple highlights. On the agenda tonight is the 2024-25 school year calendar. So we always try to get that out 18 months-ish in advance. So that's what we have there. Working with the union on selecting some options for that. We did review, there are no solar eclipses in the 24-25 school year, so we should be good on that. Also, there's a resolution for us to continue our participation with the Ohio High School Athletic Association. That's a standard resolution there. And then, as was already noted a couple times tonight, there is a resolution for closing Shawnee. And in that resolution, it gives authority for Paul and I to move forward with securing an appraiser to get a value for the property, and then secure an auctioneer. Working with our attorneys on the process, they confirmed that those charter schools and other school entities that we would have to give them a first offer at, we do not have that element here at Huron. There is an option to sell to taxing entities that can happen before an auction. And so if there's one interested, that could be like an EHOBE, right? So EHOBE is a taxing entity. If they wanted to expand programming and needed space, we could work out a deal before an auction. But the law requires then that we go to an auction, we set a reserve, and if that reserve's not hit, then the auction sale doesn't go through. After that process of the auction, we can then do like a direct sale negotiation. And so that's stuff a little bit later tonight. We'll be talking about some of our sales goals or objectives and what's best for the district, what's best for the community. And so we'll do that in a little bit. The other is just talking about the facilities. So the board has approved AVG to support us with our master facility planning. And so we are just starting that work. Friday we have a meeting with them where they're going to help us start to identify what are the steps of that process, what's the timeline for that, and also they're asking us for what are our existing blueprints. They want to review that OFCC report that we had done in 2021 And with that review, they're going to make recommendations to us either, yeah, this looks good based on what our analysis is, or we need to do a little more digging to see. And some of that will come with, as we consider a brand new pre-K 12 single building campus, or are we looking at renovations and additions on our own facilities that exist now? That work, they'll help us with that. But ultimately, there will be significant community engagement, stakeholder engagement, staff, parents, community at large. My personal preference would be to start large, funnel down, and then come back out large as we get closer to going to the voters for a bond issue. But we're going to learn more on that. With the building consolidation work that's happening, it's a busy time. We're still, I like to say, in the planning phase, but we are starting to dip our toe in the action phase. There's good discussions happening about master schedule. What are benefits for students that we can gain out of revising our master schedule? What are some things that we'll see happen next year, and what are some things that we set up next year to happen in year 2 or future? We're also looking at room assignments as far as for staff. Do we have room assignments by grade level? Do we have room assignments by subject? Those elements, and then also, does our summer crew staff have the capacity to make those shifts in a short period of time? So again, there might be some movements for year 1, and then second in year 2. And along with that master schedule, then comes the auxiliary services, special ed, gifted, related services, and those types of things. So a lot of moving parts right now. It is, like I said, still in the planning phases. And then the idea is after spring break, there would start to be some action. But already at McCormick, Christy Tokarczyk, I said that name right? Yeah. Charaski. Yeah, Mrs. T. She's a school counselor. She has been in a full-size classroom. So over on Friday, when there was no staff because of the parent-teacher conference comp day, the custodial staff was able to return her to the original school counselor's office. And now we have that classroom available for staging, either stuff that needs to get out of the building because it's no longer of use, or stuff that's coming into the building, like some new display TVs that we've already ordered and could start to be installed as early as spring break. So we're working on that. But I visited her today and thanked her for being the model the way, lead the way, being one of the first to make a move. So I thank her for that. And she embraced it. She was pleasant and happy, and she was satisfied with the new space. Also, along with facility planning is security. So we're looking at that secure vestibule at the high school. So right now when you come in, you basically have access to the building. So we're looking at ways to make that secure so you come into the office like you do at Shawnee and Woodlands. Looking at that. And then also, as kind of been talked about, if we're looking to remove the district's responsibility with Shawnee, that would include new board offices, board office relocation. And so we're looking at some opportunity space at the high school. So more to come on that, but all those parts are moving. And then lastly, that's not on the agenda or anywhere because it's just happened. We had some success with our dive and swim at BGSU this past weekend. And we had one swimmer qualify. We had 2 divers. They dove today and were successful. I'm going to forget their names, so can you help me?
Wozniak and Peter Sensor.
Max Wozniak.
Peter was 17th and Max is number 1.
Thank you. And then Grantham, thank you, is swimming for us. He starts swimming Thursday into Friday. So tomorrow at 2:15 at the high school, there will be a send-off and diver recognition. So I invite the board members to attend if you're able to, and then community, it'll be open to the community as well. So we'll do that. You know, with diving, qualifier for state happened on Saturday, and then you dive on Tuesday. There wasn't the opportunity for the send-off. So we will do a recognition for them there. But unless there's any questions, then I'm trying to keep my report brief so we have time for other discussions.
No problem, thanks. And I'll also take the time to graciously let PTO know that you don't have to sit here for the entire meeting. So I wanted to give you a way to exit. I apologize for not saying that when you finished. But we appreciate you being here.
It's
Okay.
riveting. It's
Okay.
riveting.
Same
Yeah.
with McCormick's
You-
teachers.
Yeah, McCormick's teachers.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And Chief.
Yeah. Okay. So item 5, approval of minutes. I just need a motion to approve.
That's
the-
part, John, that's part of the consent. 5, 6, and 7.
Okay, so we changed
It's
this.
a little.
Okay, that's probably my fault. Okay, so it's part of Mr. Treasurer recommendation. Okay, now I'm confused.
Well, so we
I don't
just-
have anything else on the consent agenda at this point.
The treasurer
Treasurers
recommendations
and
and
the
superintendent
superintendent.
recommendations.
So it'll,
One vote will cover all.
5, 6,
3 of
and
those
7
so you
sections.
didn't make a change.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
yeah. 'Cause the minutes used to come at the beginning.
Okay. So, help.
So I think,
It's number 6, right?
yeah, I think we're gonna move to number 8, which is a motion for agenda items 5, 6, and 7. And then there can be discussion about those items. If there's a motion.
6. I apologize. Typically, we do each agenda consent separately. So I guess that's my fault for not asking more.
We can return to that if you prefer.
No, I'm just trying. So, all right, so I see it on here now. I apologize. I'm still learning.
Okay, you're doing
So,
fine.
so we
Change it
move
up.
actually to item 8,
Yes.
looking for a motion for approval
So
of
moved.
items 5 through 7.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
James, on 7D, the MOU for the classified staff, displaced workers, can you walk through? My only question is really like how we keep the scope of that. I mean, certainly we all agreed, and I think are of the mind that the building consolidations are not being made for the purpose of like reducing staff. That wasn't an objective of the exercise. That said, my concern is how long would this particular MOU constrain us in making decisions about reducing the size of the workforce, particularly given what Paul just said about, hey, in the next 12 to 18 months, we may have some financial constraints. So I just kind of explaining
Yeah,
through.
let me explain that MOU a
Thanks.
little bit. So working with the classified union leadership, it was identified that we have reduction in force language. So if we're gonna start eliminating staff, we have in the collective bargaining agreement a process that we would follow. What we don't have in the collective bargaining agreement is what to do with displaced workers. And so as you said, this whole building consolidation is on the premise of fixed cost, operational cost savings, not staff savings. So we're not looking to reduce staff, we're looking to reassign staff. And there was confusion among the staff of, are our secretaries all going to get reassigned? And no, just the ones that are being displaced, we have to find a home for them. Same with all the other classifications, food service, aides, custodial staff. So what this MOU does is it targets it specifically for the closing of Shawnee. So if 4 or 5 years from now we're closing another building, this MOU would not carry forward to that closure. This is specific for closing Shawnee, and what it does is it provides the posting requirements that the CBA has, where we would post an opportunity, and anyone within that classification, not the whole union, but in that classification, could apply for that job. Because then if that person moves over, then that opens up a place for someone who's being displaced to still have an assignment. So we wouldn't hire someone new and then later say, well, now we have too much staff. But it is narrow in scope to just the closing of Shawnee. So it would basically be for this movement that we're doing spring into the summer for the new school year.
Does it seem, I just in my reading, it seems a little unclear that the scope is just to those affected by Shawnee. I see that in paragraph 3. like specific to transfer, but not to 1 and 2, that it's limited to staff just at Shawnee. I just want to give ourselves flexibility, given what Paul just said, over the next.
So in the beginning opening paragraph, the second
Mhm.
whereas, parties recognize the need to address closure of Shawnee and its subsequent need to reassign members. So again, that's readdressing that. It's the closure of Shawnee.
We added that to make it specific to this.
So again, if we had a mass exodus of students and our enrollment of just under 1,200 becomes something, let's say 500 students, we still have the ability to have a reduction in staff because of student enrollment. What we can't do is do a reduction in staff. Well, we're not doing a reduction in staff because of the closure of Shawnee. There would have to be another reason if we're going to look to do a reduction in staff. And financial reasons is one of those.
Do we want to expressly state that? Again, sorry, this is the lawyer in me who gets the back end when these things, aren't clear and then they're fought over right on the back end. Do we want to maybe talk to Dane or whoever we're working with about adding that express provision so that there's absolute clarity now and that's going to be on us to be clear, right? That's going to be held against us in any subsequent disagreement about what this means a year or two from now.
Yep. So, like with any document of this magnitude, it wasn't created by Paul and I in our offices. We had support in drafting this, and the union had their support in drafting it as well. So it's a memorandum of understanding. It's a mutual agreement between two. It's already passed with the Classified Union Association to make changes. If they're necessary, we would need to start the process over. But additionally, as I said, we didn't create this in our offices. It was created through consultation. So Dane helped us with this.
No, I understand what
Okay.
you're saying.
All right.
I don't know that it's super clear that if financial reasons were to come up, that would trump what's in this document. That's my concern in reading it.
Now, again, this isn't telling us that we're not allowed to RIF. What it's telling us is because of the closure of Shawnee, how are we going to reassign those displaced workers? So it's not, this isn't talking about RIF at all. That language remains in the collective bargaining agreement.
Other questions, discussion on any of these?
I just wanted to thank the administration and the unions for working out the 24-25 calendar. I know there are a lot of families that have jobs where they have to put in whatever vacation they want, like beginning of the year, more than a year in advance. So I think that really helps families be able to plan. So thanks to all of you for getting that done for our families.
I just have a real quick question under item 7, supplemental J, with the swimming coach volunteer. Wasn't Mr. Lensick approved by the board before swim started as an assistant coach?
He was not. He was offered a middle school coaching contract and declined it.
Okay.
And then he was not recommended as a swim volunteer coach. So he's being done now.
Okay, because I thought I remembered seeing his name.
No, he
on
has in the
another-
previous seasons, but
Okay.
not this season.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I just wanted to be clear that we weren't doing something twice that didn't need to be done.
Anything else?
Can I explain why I put out this handout? Just
Certainly.
the backside. This is a new report that comes from OD. It's not new information, but it's a new pull-out report that shows what it costs the district in a calendar year for College Credit Plus. So we don't they don't invoice us for this. This is just deducted from our foundation payment. So in the last 12 months, we had 159 students take at least one College Credit Plus course. And it kind of averages out to about 10 hours per kid. So it's not something that's optional for us to be a part of. It's mandated, but it is a great opportunity for those that can take advantage of it. It also shows on here what we pay based on how the class is taught. So if one of our staff teaches the class on campus, you know, it's different, but it's, you know, $41 a credit hour. If it's an online class or the kids, you know, they go to BG or wherever, it's 166. So if we have staff members that are able and willing to teach these courses, it's a huge win. Plus, we're keeping our kids here on campus. So it's nice that this report's new. It kind of breaks it out, and it does show the total cost of what we're doing.
And Paul, on the College Credit Plus note, I see that we have a contract in here that's being approved with LCCC. So that a new one, we had not had a relationship with them before.
Right, and we're not. Are we using the LCC currently for? This is just to approve it in case there's a gap we need to fill in. But so we're not currently using them, but just in case. And their costs are kind of set by the state. That's why they're all similar. They have basically a maximum they're allowed to charge, and that's basically what they charge. So, and then the other side, it's just a new look to the general fund report. I've unlocked some of the parts of SCView, so as I unlock more, there might be more data, but it shows, you know, right now, at the time this was done, we have a 1.2+ million deficit, but within days that was offset by the $1.4 million tax advance, and now there's another one coming. So compared to this year to last year, we're plus 125,000 compared to a year ago at this point. So there's still quite a bit to go before the end of the fiscal year, but we are on pace of what we did last year.
Thank you. Mr. Marco? Hey, Mr. Marco, if you...
Mrs. Hartley.
Yes.
Mrs. Mast?
Yes.
Mrs. Henners?
Yes.
Dr. LaFay? Mr. Jones?
Yes. And thank you, Dr. Tatmuth. I know we discussed a little streamlining, and I didn't pay close enough attention that you had actually done it, and so I appreciate that. Okay. So item 9. I'm assuming this is you again.
Yeah, so the first item, first reading of the policies, new revisions and revocation. So on there, the board has talked about a couple times about having more student involvement at the board level. So working with OSBA, who's our policy consultant, they provided us with an example of a student involvement with the board policy. And the other one is I've been told a reoccurring occasional theme of, hey, what's our naming facility policy? And so while we don't have any new facilities right now, we do have existing facilities, but we also don't have a pressing group, stakeholder, like vying for a name of a facility. So it's probably a good time to look at the policy. This would be new. It's not currently in place for Huron. So those are two new ones to look at. Administrative organizational plan, that's a policy that's currently in place, and there is some revision to that. And then my recommendation, or there's a first reading for revocation of policies with the organizational chart, because that would be captured up by the administrative organizational plan. And then early entrance to kindergarten. So last month, the board approved policy for adjusting the kindergarten enrollment age. You have to be age 5 by August 1st, as opposed to September 30th. So in that new policy, it covers the language of this early entrance to kindergarten. So it's redundant policy. So I'm recommending it's being discussed. So this month is discussion about those policies, and then next month there might be some refinement and then recommendation for action. So I don't know if there's any discussion once they happen. Now's the time.
In the organizational chart, there just wasn't the assistant superintendent.
Yeah, so in the current organizational chart, there is not an assistant superintendent. That was a position newly created. And then there's some like who reports to who alignment that has evolved. So yeah.
How about the role of where do counselors come in on the new org chart? I didn't know if they were.
So counselors are considered certified staff.
Okay.
So they would fall under the principal.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
On the policies, we had a short discussion about the policy. The intent would be very general, speaking of the naming policy, and then behind that would be guidelines. Correct? So that if we ever wanted to make any alterations, we wouldn't have to worry about the policy. We would just revise the guidelines. Correct? Is that my understanding?
Yeah, it would provide flexibility in those guidelines. Because this is new policy, pending board approval. After that, my intention would be to get together a group, because it says the board directs superintendent to establish a committee composed of. My intention would be to get together a group composed of those representatives, so we could start to frame out how we would process a request for a naming of a facility. And then that way, when someone expressed an interest, we would say, okay, here's the guidelines that have been established by the committee. So follow those steps, whatever that might be. And then it would work through the process. So my preference is to do it now when there's low or no interest, and that way it pulls out the it says in here, favoritism, political pressure, or temporary popularity in choosing a name. So I'm trying to tease that out, get that committee ahead of it so that they're ready when that first request comes in.
I think it's necessary and needed, and that you said it's a good time to discuss it when there's not something pressing. So the same thing with the student involvement, which I definitely speak for Ms. Hartley that we definitely want this to happen sooner rather than later. So it would be the same thing. There would be guidelines above what it says in the policy about how the person is picked.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would need to know from the board what, because again, the policy is really big and broad, right? It says that the student body has to elect the student. It has to serve for a 1-year term. But I would need to know a little more details from the board as far as what's their vision for this student's involvement. When we say a 1-year term, is that from like the school year, August to May, or is it a 12-month commitment? And then I need that information so then we can kind of underneath this policy create those guidelines and then market it to kids so they understand what commitment they're making, right? We don't want them to say, oh, I'll do it, and then they're like, wait, every month, right? So so there's some of that has to be designed that could be designed underneath this policy. Yeah.
Is there a way to give you that feedback between meetings, or?
Yeah, I mean, we can discuss it a little bit now, and then next meeting we can discuss it some more, and then go from there. Yeah.
I know it's kind of hitting us cold turkey, but particularly the student involvement, the input.
I think, OSBA had a presentation by three different districts, I think, with different students down at the conference in November. They also featured some of those same students at on a cover of the OSBA magazine last year. So some of these districts, I think, have been doing it since the 90s. So I think there may be some good best practices, maybe if they've evolved over time. What does it look like? Is it a size of district? How is that process? I think some are elected by student body. I think others are selected by board. They apply directly to the board. So there's a range, but I know there's some details at OSBA about the different options.
I can reach out to OSBA and see, what their frameworks look like, and then share those through weekly reports, and then we can come back next month and have discussion. Yeah. Because even next month, it's still not approved yet, so it could take another month after that even. Yeah. And then
On that naming facility, one of the things James and I talked about is it's not like any disagreement with the idea of a naming facility, but more of a like broader strategic thought about coupling the specific naming facility with like our approach to gifts and kind of recognition as a district. So if you guys recall, and I can't remember if this was a conversation we have with the whole board or, but there was a discussion at one point about sometimes when we get gifts from folks or memorials or honorarium types of things or requests, like say, oh, we'd like to plant a tree somewhere. And it's great, like everybody's heart's in the right place, but it may be kind of more of a burden on our team or our facilities. And so we talked about, could we like kind of create a wish list of either needs or nice to haves for different schools at different price points, so that if people came and said, you know, we'd really like to do something for the school in the name of our loved one, we could kind of guide them to something that fit with what the school needed, right? So the thought was, could we, rather than have like this committee doing one narrow thing, this committee doing, would there be a way for us to kind of maybe think about, you know, engaging like a committee that kind of considered all of those objectives, and then as, you know, different opportunities either for gifts or recognition came along, they all kind of fit within this group and set of policies rather than, you know, creating a bunch of different teams that may be overlapping with each other. So it's just a thought. I mean, I was looking at it because the OSBA's policy to me was like it was pretty narrow and tactical. And I was looking more at like some of the policies at like Ohio State and some of the broader policies where you have these like really robust, you know, fundraising and opportunities to get gifts. But just something to think about so that we can, whether it's sports or academics or whatever, but could we start to get alignment with corralling like, hey, here's what we really need with like a bunch of people who want to do good in our community, but if we're not connecting well, we might be, you know what I mean? We might not be hitting some things we need and maybe getting some things that maybe don't solve needs that we have. So I just throw that out there as a thought.
I think that's a good point, because as you say, we have trees, benches, we have all the stuff, but there's no coordinated effort to say enough is enough, or no, or yes, or why is that there? We didn't know anything about it. So can a naming policy also include memorials? I mean, I don't see why it couldn't.
Yeah, I think it definitely could. Yeah.
So it could be included in that one policy.
Yeah.
And then separate guidelines, like you said, for, like you said, memorial, then there's these guidelines, and then naming, in the case we've dealt with twice, naming the gym.
Right.
You know, what's the criteria for naming a gym? We don't have one. So, and again, now we're changing buildings and some other things, and now do we do the memorial stuff that's here and relocate? I mean, we just don't have that umbrella, as you might want to call it. So, no, I think they're good points.
It's a good time to do it. I know, you know, somebody was walking me through the gym and talking about there was a potential idea for naming, but then I was explained that the high school gym was down in its last refinishing, and so that was it. And my brain, as a fundraiser in education for 20 years, goes, you're gonna have a hard time trying to get money to raise it if you've already given away your naming opportunity. So yeah, it's thinking out, mapping out your long-term strategic planning needs, facilities, teams, existing buildings, new buildings, projects, the maintenance, all of those things, and just to kind of have a clear understanding. And one of the things where we do need to have this for a cost, there needs to be something because somebody's actually supporting and enabling our ability to do it, versus wanting to do an honorarium or memoriam and having the criteria. So yeah, you can fit really kind of 4 different buckets that you can look at, but you can package those under one single naming policy for sure.
So I had kind of left it. I was trying to take a hack at taking like some of Ohio State's and the state's policies and like trying to make them relevant, basically stripping them down a little bit, because I'm not sure we're going to be getting $100 million gift, maybe. But trying to strip them down so that we could, I think, have a breathable policy, but maybe cover a little bit more ground than just facility naming and what we're doing.
Totally agree.
Yeah, that's good. So you say you have some examples. Maybe you and I can touch base on what those examples say.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wasn't gonna have it ready for this
No,
this
no.
meeting based on, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I know the city, I believe the joint rec committee has some of this stuff in place too, if that's.
And item B, the tax incentive of board. I know we spoke briefly also, Dr. Tapman, that we have that and have had it on our website, and there's been no interest. And I don't know if I was supposed to follow up with this. I don't think they meet very often, perhaps once a year, if ever. And I was suggesting that if we need to supply a name, that at least initially we ask Mr. DeMarco to be that person. Well, I mean, it seems like it fits, and I'm not here like making this appointment. I'm just saying, if it was a weekly meeting, Paul, I would never suggest. Or I can find out more information. I'll be happy
Does
to.
this, it simply identifies a point person
Yeah.
for the city to work with if there's an opportunity for a tax incentive? Is that my understanding of the role? Yeah.
Here they would probably work with us anyways, but
I guess what I'm saying, rather have it show vacant from here in city schools, I would love to attach a name. So is that something that you would consider?
yes.
Okay. So we don't have to make a motion.
Do it.
on that. Okay, so thank you. And then I guess item C, that's.
Item C is me. So Seussical the Musical is coming to Huron. It is going to be March 31st, the weekend of March 31st. So they do have advertised sponsors in their program, and this is something that, similar to what we started conversations with at the booster program in the fall. Does the board want to have an ad in there? Linked on the agenda is the ad for ads, is the ad for sponsorship. So first question is, does the board want to be a sponsor? And then number two, what level, the quarter page, half page, or full page ad? The play is supposed to be self-sufficient in that there's copyright, there's set costs, and so the revenue that they generate through advertisements and ticket sales help cover the cost of those expenses. So, so again, it's for the board to discuss if they want to sponsor and how.
I would be certain. I would be willing to donate personally towards it. I mean, a full page ad seems to be.
Sure.
If everyone would agree, that's only $20 per person.
Yeah.
And I guess my only thing is, what are we putting in said ad?
We just need our picture
And do we
taken.
get- oh yeah, oh that's it.
Break a leg.
I'm kidding.
People would use it.
So
I mean, is that in agreement with everybody? That way we can.
I'm game.
And then.
Sounds good.
we have a graphic design artist on the board. They can take a stab at it. I can have Luann work on it too. She's pretty good at what she does.
And so we need to make checks out and get them.
Checks payable to Huron High School.
Do you send a reminder when, like an email when I'm close to my checkbook for that? Please?
I can take care of that.
Thank you.
Thanks. I mean, I think it's important for us to show, and I don't think we should take money out of the general fund. So, awesome. Thank you also, Dr. Tapman. Thanks for bringing that up. And so now I definitely know it's you.
Yeah. So this again is I've talked about it a couple times tonight, but really Paul and I need to start hearing from the five of you as far as thoughts, as far as sale outcomes. So as I've shared in written reports to you, you could look at it two ways, and either way you go, you could have individuals in the community upset or excited. There's probably a third way you can look at it too. One would be, hey, we want to get the highest dollar we can for the sale of Shawnee. We don't really care who takes over ownership. If it's a outside land investment company, as long as we get top dollar, that's what we need because our finances are what they are. The other would be, we're not so worried about the the sale proceeds. We're more worried about being good stewards to the district, to the community, and having Shawnee become a space that benefits the community, and also definitely does not become a boarded up eyesore or things like that. And maybe there's, again, somewhere in between, and maybe it's, you know what, if we got top dollar, but for doing the right thing, we can get, 85, 90% of that. I'm not asking for percentages in this conversation, just kind of thoughts on, what are our desired outcomes for the Shawnee sale.
There's a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
We have no idea what the appraisal will be.
That's true.
We have no idea what Montessori, as Mr. Murray stated, is even able or willing to offer. And we don't know if, there's just too many unanswered questions. There's so many unknowns. I think, we'll have a better understanding once we get an appraisal, so we know what we're actually dealing with. And you're 100% correct. We're gonna have to make a decision on how we want to handle this. And yeah, there's gonna be community members that if we decide to take less than what it's appraised at because we want to have Montessori take over this building, we may pay for it come levy time. That may come back to really not do us a whole lot of good. At the same time, if we go for top dollar and we upset parents that are a part of Montessori and they want, that could hurt us too. So I think we need to get the appraisal, see what we're dealing with value wise, and then kind of revisit how we want to. That would be my suggestion. I just think we don't have enough information.
That's good.
I fully agree with you on that piece, because it's hard to put out the value proposition when we don't have anything to tether it to, right? That said, this is a public taxpayer asset. And I think it creates a challenge for us. By the way, my kids went to Firelands Montessori when they were young. It was a tremendous asset, especially for little kids, and the ability to have them in all day school, which is kind of there's not a lot of those opportunities. So I have great respect for everything that they do, but is it a proper use of a public taxpayer asset to either subsidize, to basically subsidize a private non-for-profit, a specific private non-for-profit? Because certainly there's other non-for-profits, entities within the community that would have similarly, I think, compelling cases for a subsidized purchase. We have another private school here in Huron, with St. Pete's, that also doesn't have the ability to get publicly subsidized property. So I think it does create a whole lot of challenges for us to consider. But I'm with Jody that I think that the starting line is the appraisal. And it's difficult to really give you guys direction, which I appreciate you need, but I don't think it's a chicken and the egg thing. I think the appraisal really is your starting line for us to be able to kind of help provide direction.
Sounds good.
Honestly, might become a moot point still.
Correct too, right? So,
Do you have a timeline, like one of the I know
The appraisal will be in your hands probably by the end of the month, so definitely before next board meeting.
And then when were you looking for guidance for this? Did you I know tonight, but I mean.
no, not necessarily tonight.
Did
Just
you
no.
have
I mean,
something
you
like a
guys.
drop dead.
Yeah. No, I have no
Okay.
drop dead. Right.
I have probably a stupid question, but you know how when you sell a house and you have to get it inspected, does that OFCC report, there's so many acronyms and stuff. Does that report, is that in lieu of an inspection, or would we have to get it re-inspected?
That would be the burden on the buyer to have that done.
I know, but
OFCC report public.
It is public. Yeah.
I was just thinking about, there's a reason that we're not maintaining this building as part of the school system. It's falling apart quite literally, and that may play into the Montessori's decision making. So,
And I mean, let's not the building is safe for instruction, right?
Oh,
It's safe
okay,
for
sorry.
kids, right? But we are like one bad boiler away from a high expense repair. And so if we can reduce the number of boilers, we are from 4 down to 3 as far as number of buildings with boilers. That's going to lower our risk of these high expense repairs. They're still going to be out there, but yes. So yeah, Paul's working to arrange an appraiser, and then that will happen. I would say OFCC's report is a public document. There have been people that have requested it for their view. Also, I would say, like the building's utility bills are public documents. So if there's someone who wants to look those over to see, this winter might be a false winter because it's been so mild that our heating bill has fortunately been lower than probably previous winters. But yeah, all that information is available, and I would say, like Paul, it would be up to the buyer as far as like contingency on like an inspection or things like that. Yeah.
There's not quite the same requirements for commercial versus like not residential. You know what I mean? There are some things you just can't do when you sell out. Let me ask this question though, because when Mr. Murray was up talking, the concept or the idea of a lease still seems to be kind of being floated. Are we in agreement that we have no desire to lease this building, and that like the direction that we're asking you to execute on is a sale?
Yes, that's a good question.
Yes, because I think that's huge, and I
Yeah.
think it also helps Montessori to the extent that they want to position themselves for their goals. It may help narrow. It may help narrow kind of the path forward for them.
Yeah, I would say the vibe I'm getting is, again, this consolidation of the buildings is to save operating costs. So if we're still operating a building, even if it's to a leaser, we haven't really net the savings that we tried to gain.
So does it help you if we take any formal action in that regard? Just because it seems like, at least the perception from the outside is that's an open issue as to whether we would lease Shawnee. And I don't know that it's an open issue among the 5 of us.
Where it was brought up to me in one-on-one discussion was like a interim kind of like gap year or something. Like if it took us a year to offices or whatever, if instead of having it sit empty for a year, would that be a lease opportunity?
Like we would be leasing from them.
Either way.
Or the other way around.
Yeah.
Instead of having the building sit empty for sale and nobody's here, leasing it temporary. I don't think that's a good idea.
I don't either.
I'm all for the sale.
And I think moving quickly, and I think getting that appraisal will be key. I think we can't control what happens to the property after we sell it to somebody. So if we, in the kindness of our hearts, discount it steeply to someone and they take possession and they ultimately get a great offer and they're going to turn around, that is taxpayer money we have just left on the table. So I think the appraisal is going to tell us a lot about where we should be, at least in a ballpark. And like you said, James, determining if we have some wiggle room and leeway, but we have no idea what it is.
Stacey, that's a really good point, because I would say in my last district in the 90s, the district bought 40 acres of property. And in theory, it was for the next elementary building that we need. But the real reason was they wanted to slow the residential growth in that district because they were booming with residents. So then you fast forward to 2019, the district was tight on cash at hand, and they decided they're going to sell that 40 acres because they need the cash now, and that enrollment had leveled off. So they went through the auction process. There was no one who won the bid, and so it went out to market. And the local farmer who lived next door, he was going to buy it because he had made a lot of money in the patent game that people do. And so the district was excited. Hey, this farmer's going to buy it, and you ask him what he's going to do with it. He's going to hunt on it. Like, that's it. Not 2 months later did he turn around and have a developer there, and they're now putting in houses, right? So there was some upset board members and superintendent and everyone else because we thought we were getting a good buyer, and he had a partner in the purchase. So
yeah, and it's not to cast aspersions on anybody who'd want the property, but I just want us to remember that we're responsible for taxpayer funds, and so it's on us. This is an asset, and it's on us to make sure that we maximize what we do with this property.
The only other thing I brought to when we say like we do the right thing, I think we want to be careful like socially engineering the city of Huron because I don't think that's necessarily our role. I mean, we have a zoning code and things like that that keeps certain things that you wouldn't want in Shawnee out, like the Hustler building or whatever. But for here, like housing's at a premium in Huron. Right? So, I mean, if somebody were to come and put housing in, for example, there is a social value to that in here. And I know that would also increase our property tax base, right? Currently, we don't generate any tax money off Shawnee or this property. If it was held in different hands under the right circumstances, it could generate, not solve problems, but certainly add money versus cost it.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Please.
The other one that Paul had brought up is this property is zoned for R1, which is
Single family
residential.
residential. So that was the next topic, not to muddy the waters any. You can put schools, churches on any type of property. So I talked to the city a little bit about potentially rezoning this to R3, which would be multifamily, to make it, that would maximize the financial side of it without, there's no downside if a school wants to move in or a church or something like that. They can build anywhere or they could go in any type of zoning. The risk then becomes a political risk. If families don't want a
have multi.
I know.
it's
So-
right on the
But they're
doorstep.
gonna envision it,
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're looking at, a private developer coming in, they're going to knock the building down. Not likely though that they're going to put single family housing. There's just not enough space to make it cost effective. So it's going to be those fourplex or something like next door. And my question is, will that make it more financially attractive to private dollars if we start the process? It's probably a 4 to 5 month process to change zoning. There's no financial downside, but there's the political risk of upsetting especially the local residents that touch this property.
When we look back historically, where the existing like townhouses are, was that initially zoned R1 and then rezoned R3, or was it always R3? I'm sure the city would. I'm just curious because
Right.
obviously it was an impediment. Somebody was able to. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just anecdotally, I don't know if you were part of it, James, there's a housing study that is underway right now, and this is regional, that is being run out of like Ecadec and Firelands Forward, and it's I mean, like, that the housing, both in rental and purchasing, is tough. The numbers that quantify it, that you should have about 2 to 3% stock available. We have like 0.3% in Erie County. There are 24 rental units available out of 3,000 in Erie County. So there's definitely a need that potentially, hampens people's ability if they want to move here and live here, be part of the community. But anyway, that's a different issue.
Okay, so we're waiting for the appraisal.
Sounds
That's
good to
the
me.
bottom line.
If it's, before we put a pin in this discussion, if it's rezoned now or that process is happening, could that potentially change the appraisal?
Yes, it will. I mean, the short answer is yes. Because that was the first question, because I called several appraisers, and they wanted to know the zoning. So all of our built were all R1 in the district, so.
All right, item E.
So the Huron Joint Rec District. So at last meeting, it was charged that we were going to have a group meeting between the three entities with representatives. So Jody, Stacy Hartley, Paul, and I attended the meeting. It was actually hosted here, and there were representatives from the city and the township, and we really had good discussions, rich discussions. We talked about the initial creation, the history of it, how it's evolved over time. Originally, it was, you can go back in time to 1995 as some of the original, and then the sharing of funds to support the the work of the Joint Rec happened in the early 2000s. As in the past, the Huron Joint Rec, the Huron District has paid 10%, and the city and township have divided that other 90%. I forget their percentages, but
65, 30.
all right, there we go.
65, 35, 10. Yeah.
But in that discussion, there was recognition that everyone's budgets are tight. Money, we have to be good fiscal. We have to be good with fiscal responsibility with the taxpayer monies. All three entities agreed to that. And looking at the value of the three coming together, it was recognized that there are other ways to fund a joint rec. And so that could be joint rec district is its own entity and it has taxing authority. So it could go out and place a levy, for its operations. So that was discussed. And it was also discussed why that hasn't been done yet. So shared responsibility and shared benefit, the city, the township have felt that that is a better funding model than going to the voters. I think we're unique. Stacy was able to do some research on across the state of Ohio. I think we're unique in that model as far as the funding structure. There are a few others that are paid through voter-approved levies, and then there are some that are come together through joint efforts, but no exchange of financial resources. So I don't know, Paul, if you have more to add, but so working then, it was discussed, is there another way to structure, if we have to remain with the three entities contributing, is there another way to structure it? So instead of here's the budget and the district pays 10%, is there another way to look at it? And I proposed the idea of, a lot of services that the district pays for is based on its student enrollment. So average daily membership, ADM, is what that number is. Our services with our ITC provider, our services, funding from the state of Ohio comes in based on our ADM. There's a lot of finances that tie back to that ADM. And so is there a way to structure the district share or contribution to be more structured based on a per student rate per year and then how many students we have in a given year? So if you look at like the 2009-2010 school year, and I always pick that one because that's when, for my facility study, that was the year I picked. We had over 1,500 students. And now we have under 1,200 students. And also our contribution to the Huron Joint Rec has increased since the 2009-2010 school year. So our per student share has gone up. But is there a way to structure it where contribution from the district comes based on that ADM and go from there? That's the update I'm providing you. I kind of need to know thoughts and then next steps and go from there.
I like the idea of not having competing levies in town, for starters. I really like this. I feel like it allows the budget to drive decision making instead of the other way around. Some cohesion. So I think this is a really nice compromise.
My position hasn't really changed, and what I was hoping was we would see a proposal with an in-kind recognition of what we provide to this city in terms of access to our buildings and facilities for their programming. Certainly recognize the in-kind access that the city gives us to, for example, the tennis courts or some of theirs. These are taxpayer paid for assets. And the idea that we're going to take more taxpayer money to pay for the use of assets that taxpayers have already paid for, we're not purchasing services. So when we put this down to like a per student like kind of cost, it is different because we're not purchasing like X amount of services from North Point. There's no quantifiable like economic like kind of return on investment for whether you propose $42 a head per student. That's not what's happening. It's a giveaway of taxpayer funds. And while I appreciate we don't have different entities competing for levies. It sounds nice in theory. What we're saying to the taxpayers is we're going to take your $50,000 this year and you get no voice on how it's spent. And then we're going to commit to taking some more of your money next year and you get no voice on how it's spent. I don't understand why we would propose treating the joint park district different than, for example, the library, which certainly has every bit of educational value for our kids as a joint park district. And yet, when they need a levy, they go to the taxpayers, make their case, and put it on the ballot. And it doesn't hurt the schools, right? Like it's as democratic as possible so that the taxpayers know that, hey, when we support the libraries, this is how much of our property tax goes for that purpose. And the library's accountable for what they do and the decisions they make directly to the taxpayers. Right now, the Huron Joint Park District is directly accountable to no one from a voter standpoint. It doesn't feel like the type of like honest, transparent way that so many of us ran on engaging with our taxpayers. And now let's go with when Paul talks about over the next 12 to 18 months, we're gonna have to be making hard decisions. This seems like an easy one. Where do I find $50,000? Right here. You find it right here. 2 years ago, and granted, a lot of us weren't sitting on this board when the last levy failed. Like there was a whole list of choices the board could have made to save money. And 3 of those bullet points, one was cutting busing to the high school. One was imposing $125 pay to play fee on families. And the other one was this cost. This could have been cut 2 years ago. And for whatever reason, the board at that time took it to the students and the families with its cuts and continued to pay money to the city parks. Like, it's bizarre. I think it's time for us to put like our students and families first. And if the city really is the partner that I hope it is, they'll understand and they'll work with us on an in-kind situation. But if we're going to go to these voters in 12 to 18 months and we're literally giving their money away for missions that are not our own, we're going to have a really tough time trying to accomplish the goals that we need to accomplish over the next few years, in my opinion.
I think it always gets discredited, the things that the city does for us, because you say that, like, or I've heard you and other members say that those are things that they should have access to anyway. But, you know, when you're looking at putting 5 tennis 3, they're considering the schools and that, and things like when they put soccer lights up at the stadium or whatever, you know, it's always been sort of this cohesive relationship. And I think there's a lot of beauty in fostering that. And us as a board that the taxpayers elected, that's their vote and how they're spending their taxpayer dollars. It's our decision making. So to say that we're just not giving them a voice is not true. We're their voice. So, you know, that's why we're having this conversation right now.
I think it's tough. My position has not changed since we voted on this in December. I think there's not many entities where we would just write a blank check to somebody and hand it over. I mean, and James, I'm really grateful for the work that you put into this, because the approach and realizing how do we look at vendors, and we pay for services on a per head basis. So I appreciate the work that went into even just looking and approaching and thinking about it that way. When I, expand on that, I think, what are we getting for it? For $42 a head? I mean, it's just there's nothing that we can point to and be like, it's this staff person who is serving this educational service for our children. And we talked about this before, when last year it was going to be for somebody to help maintain grass. And I asked point blank to the city, does this mean that somebody can come over, that person can come and help maintain ours? There is a value in that, because then that frees up our staff to do other things that are really necessary and that only they can do. But that wasn't part of it. So again, I just want to acknowledge and appreciate you for the work that you've put into this and the time that you've put into this. For me personally, I still just can't get behind giving the money away.
I think calling it a blank check is not a good thing to say, because I don't think that's true. I mean, we're not signing a check and letting them fill out the amount. We'll have come up with some kind of formula rather than, again, just a percentage. the township seems to not have a problem with paying or contributing a lot more than us.
They actually
And-
do. They actually do.
Oh, they do?
Yes, they do.
You do.
They do. Gordon specifically said they're at the ceiling of what they are willing to contribute.
Okay.
They will not go above what they're contributing this year. They're done.
There
So-
we go. Higher.
Correct.
Okay,
So-
I didn't know that. First I've heard that.
But they're also talking about what's the right amount. I attended their meeting recently, and they're like, James acknowledged right off the bat, all three of us have a specific purpose of why we collect the tax dollars we have, and each of us is getting into situations where we are having to talk about going back to the taxpayers for additional funds. And so we have to stop and think, well, are we sure we're taking care of absolutely all of our needs first? And we're not. We're not, and we're still going to have to go to the taxpayers. So in that way, it's like it's not about not being a good partner, because we are an extraordinary partner in making all of our buildings accessible, and there is a real value in that. If those programs were going to be done, and Doug Steinwert offered that at the meeting, he said we wouldn't be able to do half the programs we do because of you giving the buildings. So I think it's not about not being a good partner. It's not wanting to be in the partnership. It's the very real, we are unlimited assets. We have to be really careful about what we're doing. And we have to remember that we are in the business of serving the educational needs of the K-12 students in this community. That's why we have the money.
I think everybody knows that. That's why we're here. But again, this, I'm going to stick with that. I feel like we should still contribute. I feel like we get a lot more from the city than they get from us.
I think this isn't about the city. This is about the Joint Recreation District. I don't think anyone's disputing the city. I think what we're
Well, that's
talking
in the
about
Joint
is the Joint Recreation District.
That's a problem, right? And the Joint Recreation District is a separate legal entity. It has taxing authority. It is a fourth body. It's actually a fifth body because we also have the library. It is not a shell as a pass-through for the city running its Parks and Rec. That is not why. That's why nobody else in the state, schools are not contributing to this. They're not even part of these agreements in half of them. And most of them, 8 out of the 12, tax, because if this board wants to put together, like, say, this is the programming, this is the park we want to buy, they get the taxpayer approval to do that and to do that expense with taxpayer funds. Ours does not function that way at all. It functions as auxiliary funding, supplementing the city's Parks and Rec.
We're literally the only school district in the state out of more than 600 school districts who run this way. If it's for a best practice, surely we would not be alone in setting up like
I'm
this.
saying that every school district has a joint.
No, there are only 12 joint recreation districts in the entire state.
That's not a statement.
Correct, because, no, it is a true statement.
No, not if there's only 12.
Let me finish. Yeah, there's 12. So out of the more than 600 school districts in the state of Ohio, only 12 are a party to any type of joint park and rec district.
6.
I'm sorry. There's
There are
only 12 total.
12
Only
total
6.
joint rec
Only 6
districts
schools
in the
that we
state.
partner to it.
And
Only
only 6.
one contribute cash, and that's us. Those are all true statements. And like I said, if this were a standard way of operating and a best practice, why are we the only school district in the state who operates like this? Our voters deserve a say in how their money is spent, and it's not amicable, and it's not kind. It's convenient to just run our operating levy like a shadow levy for the parks to the tune of $50,000 a year or whatever the number is. But it's not transparent. It's not honest. It's not on mission, and it's not a best practice in the state. And it's time we stop saying, well, historically we do it. Well, historically we did a lot of things that weren't best practices and got us into deficits and a lot of failed levies. It's time we start, again, putting the families and students first. And again, I'm not talking about dissolving a partnership, ending a partnership, but renegotiating it so that two really valuable in-kind trades
are recognized, and then that forms the basis of the partnership, not some cash contribution of money that's not ours. This isn't like me giving $20 for the advertisement for the musical. That's my money. I give it. This is the taxpayers' money, and I don't think we're free to just donate it or contribute it at will.
The taxpayers say in the money again. I don't think we're being duplicitous with any public, anyone from the public.
Okay, so Dr. Tatman, where do we go?
Yeah, so thank you for this discussion. Let me reflect on everything that's been said. And I mean, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Finish
I was
what
just say
you're
I find that Huron Joint Rec is an amazing partnership between three entities. And when I was leaving my previous district, who is set up similarly, where there's a city, a township, and a school district, they continually, since 2000, have been trying to create a similar structure and could never get it done. To the point where the one who runs the city's recreation, she's like, "You're going to a place that has a joint rec with the schools and the community and the city and the township involved." So, I mean, I think we all see the value of it, and I think the long history of it adds value to it. If there's refinement that needs to happen, that can be discussed at the Huron Joint Rec board meeting as far as structure, and we just need to decide if we're going to value that and participate with the current structure as it is, or if we're not. And I know the board has already voted no for this year, but I would rather, well, I don't know. I have to think about it.
So, what I, not to muddy the waters more than need be, but I would like to share in the spirit of transparency that I was contacted last evening by a city council member who threw out an interesting scenario. Huron City Schools is going to start offering the conservation class, and there was the thought that's, I guess, been thrown around with the city's purchase of the park on, is it River Road or Berlin Road? On Berlin Road, because there's access to water there, there's forest, I don't know, I've not been there. But there was the talk of a potential, and this is like so much in the infancy, of creating a lab environment at that park to coincide with the conservation class. And that would be a partnership between Parks and Rec and the schools. And so, and this is just someone throwing out an idea. And like I said, I don't want to muddy the waters or try and change anyone's mind, but I think if we could come closer on something that actually had value, that you could quantify, it might be a little bit different. I don't know, but I just wanted that information to be out there, just as something to think about. And I don't even know if it's going to happen, but it was just an idea that was thrown out there. So, to throw a little bit more.
Sounds like a presentation I heard at OSBA.
Would it be different than what already exists at, say, like Old Woman Creek or kind of our existing metro parks?
Yeah, I have no idea. It was just an idea that was thrown out there of, hey, you guys have this new conservation class. We've got this park. It's got water. It's got this. Wouldn't it be great if we could create some kind of lab for your students to come out and use? And then, so I don't know. I have no idea.
There, has that national estuary.
So,
I would say at this point, the only thing we probably need to find out is, do we have seats on the joint? I would think we do.
Three.
Well, I know, but that's also when we contributed.
Right.
I'm assuming it's still going to be okay because nothing in the statutes or anything talk about having, as has been pointed out. You don't have to give money to be part of it. So I would hope that we could still keep our seats there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess do we want to suggest writing a draft back that is the donation of our buildings? So there is an agreement that is in place for this year.
Yeah, from the discussion that we had, you were there, Jody. It didn't sound like the other two entities, while they value and recognize the in-kind facilities and others that we purchase, they don't necessarily need an agreement to put that into recognition. They already recognize it.
And I think just for those who weren't at that meeting with the three entities, I came away from that meeting feeling very positive about all of us getting together and talking about this, because it had not ever been done. And we hadn't had the opportunity as three different entities to share our frustrations, our vision, why this might be a hardship for one or more of the entities. I personally felt that the city absolutely 100% understood decision that was made by the board with the initial agreement, and it was communicated that they are still want to work with us. It wasn't a one or done. It wasn't, if you're not going to be part of this, then you're against us and we're done. It was not that at all. It was very much wanting to work with us, and even saying, you know, we understand you're heading towards possibly leaner times. If you come to a time where it's not as lean and you want to revisit, we're happy to do that. I felt like it was not argumentative, and I felt like they understood where we were coming from.
My understanding was that they basically had said, well, if this isn't okay, we do understand that, but can you come back with a proposal of what the board would be comfortable with, where this draft came into play?
You're right, and that's where this draft is coming into play. But we also already voted no on it. So, I mean, if we want, I guess if we want to do another draft of another proposal, and I just feel like it's just, we have the potential to keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Understood. I thought this was the revision of the draft. So if we voted no on something that is dead, right? Are we just not even?
I mean, we can take action on it. This is under discussion and action, so we can take action on it if we want to. I mean, that's up to the board members if they want action on this.
I guess my question is, if we don't take action tonight, what are our next steps?
To get some clear direction.
I think what our next step would be is we need to give direction to Dr. Tapman as to what are the wishes of the board going forward with the joint. That's how I understand it. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the point of the discussion, correct?
Yes, and it doesn't seem that another vote would be in order, because I think the reason for the vote turning out the way it was is because it was a contribution. So it's clear that that's not what the board voted for. So to vote on this proposal, my guess would turn out to be the same.
Procedurally, we don't have to vote on it,
No.
correct?
No. It just does still leaves it in limbo, other than we've already voted no as a group.
Mm-hmm.
So we can also request Dr. Tapman that he does spend no more time on it.
To be clear, we voted no on a 10% contribution
for this year.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. This is proposing that we do it per child.
I also heard the no vote was it needs to be discussed. There needs to be a meeting and there needs to be discussion, and those things took place. So I think we've evolved So if there is a motion to take a vote, I think it is a distinctly different agreement that's before us. And really, if this board were to vote it in favor, it still has to go to the other two to accept. And based on the conversations we had at that meeting, I think they would be open to this structure, but you don't know until they vote.
Respect, when we talk about the actual hard dollar contribution this year would be exactly the same. You just reduced it, like taking that $49,000 that they've asked for, divided our enrollment, and found a per student amount. So I mean, it's it's a different formula to get to the same spot. Now I get what you're saying is, well, in year 2 or 3, we would look to reduce that amount, but we'd still be committing to making contributions to the tune of $35,000 per year to the joint park district, which right now under this agreement would continue to pass through to the city, right? I mean, like just calling like what it is, it's still a $50,000 payment this year to the city. We're just breaking it down by student in the agreement.
Correct. So we're starting to pivot the design of the payment from a percentage to a per student. And as part of that, yes, this year's rate does match what a 10% contribution is. I mean, yeah, we're not calling it something different than what it is. So that's correct. Again, in discussions last month, or in December, I heard it wasn't necessarily the amount, it was the structure of how it is and how we get told what the rate is as opposed to factors that we normally look at for driving what a contribution is or what a cost is for a service.
Well, I'll tell you, for whatever it is, and I know we didn't vote with an actual direction on this in all fairness, but I mean, my thought was, and I know Mrs. Hartley has made the same point, that we negotiate an in-kind contribution. If you're saying that they don't care what you provide in terms of a non-cash amount, okay. But I mean, that the direction, at least that we were suggesting, was a little bit different, and that was an agreement that involved no cash payment. And, you know, just the consideration would be much like it is in some of the other school districts that are partners, but they're partners through their in-kind contributions, that we would look to mirror that type of agreement going forward.
Sure. And if what I said came off as they don't care, that is inaccurate. I did not portray that correctly. What I meant to say, or what I was trying to say, is if the district's contribution will be in-kind services, they don't see a need for an agreement to state that.
So somebody can make a motion to accept this proposal. You certainly can do that, which would give further direction. If I'm right, Dr. Tapman, I would give.
Good. Yep.
Do have that opportunity. Other than that, would be my thought process is that if we don't do anything about it, we also at the same time ask Dr. Tapman to don't do anything more.
And
Clearly,
just
that's
well, but you know, in here, and we talked about this in the meeting, in this community, for whatever reason, we have conflated the formation of a Huron Joint Recreation District with the necessity of us handing over money to a party. Most other communities don't do that. And we
fine.
have agreements from other districts. Sylvania Schools is one that has it. They have a huge they have an agreement. There's no money that's tied, because you have to have the entities, the public entities are the ones that agreed jointly to create the district. It's totally separate from money. So it's totally separate. So we would be able to do that if we wanted to do that and keep all the contribution, language, conversation totally out of it.
correct.
And
That
go to how
agreement's
it's
already
like,
in place.
it's not in place.
Yes, it is. I have a copy of it.
From
Original-
1995.
They do it every
Yeah.
year. No, we talked about this at the meeting, that it might be good
That was
for.
the formation.
That was the formation, and there was no money, there was no talk of money in 1995.
Correct.
The exchange of money did not start until, what was it, like 2000?
But I don't believe there was an updated agreement
There has not been an updated agreement.
since 1990.
We sign it every year. I mean,
No,
this
no,
is.
no, it's different. I'm talking about the creation of the district itself.
we create it every year. We talked about that at the meeting, and
Okay.
and they
Well, that's
said
not
that
my
they would.
understanding.
Yeah.
It says this is entitled for what it's worth. What James is the draft. It says an agreement confirming the joint acquisition, operation, and/or maintenance of a recreational facilities and to establish the Huron Joint Recreational District. So I don't think it's necessarily a body that like lives on indefinitely. It appears these agreements like establish it every year.
And it can live on in perpetuity. There are communities who signed it once in the 90s and the 60s and the 70s. That agreement exists because there's no funding tied to it. It creates that body, it sets up the structure, it's the bylaws for it, and then it goes and it operates separately.
The original
Yes.
concept of
Yeah. And it has changed.
Okay, so what do we want to do? Because we have plenty of other things yet to work on. To do anything? It's fine.
If this agreement through this discussion is not going to be satisfactory, I would say we stick with what we voted on at our previous meeting, and that was no for this year. And we then are tasked with next year, which we should start working on this year, and come up with some kind of verbiage that either defines how we want this to go forward, whether it's in kind, whether, how we want this to work. But I believe we have already voted no at our previous meeting. So if this is not satisfactory, then we need to abide by what we already voted on and then get to work immediately on what we would like to see for next year.
Except we're not going to put that on Dr. Tatman's plate
I didn't say we
right
did.
now.
I didn't
No,
say
I'm
we were.
I'm
I
just
said
I'm
we.
stating something.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not,
said we.
I didn't say
Yeah.
you said anything. I'm just stating.
Mhm.
Trying to
Yeah.
be clear, especially for him, because he needs to know. So, is everybody in agreement with that? No.
We're kicking the can down the road. and I don't
Well,
wanna
that's
do
what
that.
I'm trying to move on.
Yeah, I understand.
Quite frankly, and
I
I'm-
understand.
I agree with Beth on that point, and I guess I agree with the point that like this is probably outside the scope of the day-to-day operations of and not something that James needs to spending more time on. I am curious, and Stacey, I haven't done the research you've done to take a look at what Sylvania has because I do see the potential value of creating an entity like you're talking about. It may even have, as we go to these master facilities plannings, and William, I'm looking at you now too, but as we start to like lay out what the school plans or what the community wants from the schools, and if we were to reimagine our facilities, it may be that there's certain things that are better served by a joint recreational committee or district raising funds for certain things that the schools can't do, but that the community would benefit from kind of having all on the same property or whatever, that it may give us more flexibility as a community to serve taxpayer needs, to have an entity like that. Not necessarily that we're funding as a pass-through to fund something that already exists at the city, but to create like an entity that could accomplish certain things that maybe as a district we can't accomplish when we go to do facility planning. So it may be something that we take a look at.
Yeah, I have Sylvania's. They sent it. Their treasurer sent it to me. So.
If nobody has a problem, I'd like to take a short recess. That's okay. Thanks.
Might need these. I need to break into these.
She said they're not spicy, but I don't know.
You don't talk about it. What'd you get? What kind you get? But there.
Here's Sylvania's. They actually get paid by the joint rec pays them. It mows their grass at their play yards in exchange for. Yeah, I mean these are actual districts, and the agreements for 10 years. The district was created in '88. City to township to school. But when I called the treasurer and talked to him, he was like, "What do you do?" No, we entered the agreement. Have someone that you can like do let them use our yards, like happy to, and they know all of our backs. I'm like, all right, thanks. Copy the agreement, but absolutely.
Consideration, you can make somebody an additional insured on certain.
And that language is in here. That language is in here. Yeah.
But
no.
Oh, then I don't want to be on my. No.
I brought another one.
In case you got a spicy.
Well, I've advertised. It is what it is.
Pickle. Just remember when they used to be called beef jerky. Now it's meat sticks. For some reason, that's unappetizing. Meat sticks.
It cracks me up when I see them.
Yeah. Pickle stick.
Which kind did you
You're
have?
hanging in there, huh?
What kind did you have, Julie? That's what I had. It's pretty good. Right.
Thank you for indulging me.
Snacks. Snacks are good.
So we can, oh, I'm sorry, we can move on from that, correct? We know we're okay. Good. Okay, so the next one is, oh, sorry, Paul. I apologize for.
That's gonna go off for a second.
Item F is committee structure, something else we had kind of delayed.
Sorry. So at the work at the board work session with Terry Morgan here, she helped clarify that board committees fall under the same sunshine laws as full board meetings, where you have to post the meeting, take minutes, open to the public, and all that. She said, so a lot of districts have moved to superintendent committees where you could have a board liaison as part of a member of that committee. So I guess that's some discussion that if we wanted to move the structure that way, not because we're trying to hide anything, but for efficiencies of operations, the committee can meet as needed, when needed, as opposed to having to do all those formal processes. With the exception for me, and Terry said it, facilities. We all have interest in facilities. I know there's at least 3 board members who want to serve on that committee. So my kind of take on that is we keep that as a board committee for facilities, and it becomes a standing item of discussion for every board meeting. That's where those facility committee meetings are held during a regular board meeting. If there needs to be a special facility committee meeting because there's a decision that has to move and we can't wait for the next regular meeting, we would then call a special board meeting with all the proper notices. So for me, that could remain a board committee facility with all 5 of you listed, me and Paul, and others as invited or as needed, and from there. I think the policy structure that Stacy and I have, where OSBA sends me the policies, I review them, consult with admin who have interest or responsibilities in that area. So if it was gifted, I would talk with Julie. If it's early entrance or kindergarten entrance, talk with Julie and Brian, and then I feed those over to Stacy. We have some dialogue, and then we bring it to the board for a first read and then a second reading in action. But again, I think we should call it a superintendent committee with Stacy. Well, if Stacy wants to remain, but with a board liaison as one of those, an identified board liaison to serve on that. These other ones are already listed. So teaching and learning, they're already listed as superintendent committees. Teaching and learning, finance and audit, operations, safety and security, Hall of Fame, and then athletic boosters.
Seems like those 2 actually should be moved down to community, shouldn't they?
I think so. Yeah, Hall of Fame and athletic boosters.
District committees.
I thought actually we had done that.
I'm thinking those 2 could move down to community representatives, and we could have board liaisons for those. The other community representatives are Joint Rec, EHOVI, and then the OSBA Legislative, which we've already, Mr. Jones is serving the second year of his 2-year term. And same with EHOVI, yeah. So those are kind of already set. Those are already set because they've been meeting.
And I know I mentioned, just in talking to you a couple times, I'm fine with that because I think the general idea is to try to move away from us necessarily being on committees. In other words, with you here and the way things are going, I'm fine if I don't come to safety and security meetings unless you want me there. In other words, or somebody there. Same with operations. It seems to me these are things that you are doing that are in your purview with Keith or safety and security, whatever, and you don't necessarily need me or a board member to be in the way. I mean, that's how I look at it.
Not in the way.
So,
but I recognize board members. You guys have work lives, personal lives, and it's a lot. So you do hire Paul and I to run the district, and that's our job. So we make time for this work. You guys get to oversee, implement policy, and oversee the big ideas. So yeah, I'm good with what you're saying, John.
Then finance and audit, I'm not really sure where that is. That since that's like Paul's committee, I mean, is that still in the right place? Or
yeah, I would say that's like a treasurer's committee, or
right. I mean, all committees are called superintendent. Even if they're
okay, but I
by
mean,
treasurer.
so it shouldn't be a board. It should still be where we don't want to give notice and all the other stuff.
I think because there was the gap last year, it hadn't been held in several months.
Right.
So I picked up. They were taking minutes. They were having the regular meetings, but I still interpreted it as a superintendent.
Right, and I think it was. All I'm saying is, at this point, I don't think an operations has never met, and safety and security, I don't feel the need that I have to be there anymore because you're keeping us informed, which again wasn't really happening. Things weren't moving. So that's how I feel about committees. So what else? Because we just need to get this finalized.
So I would say maybe there could be a motion to move Hall of Fame and athletic boosters down to the community, so it's in the right part of the list.
So moved.
Okay. There could be, and
Wait for it. Wait for it.
I lost my job.
and maintain the, there could be maintaining the facilities as a board committee and make it a standing agenda item on board agendas for moving forward.
Okay.
And then,
So go for it. So we do have first and second. Does anybody have any discussion? And the people that are on here want to remain attending these meetings?
Yeah, I'm happy to unless someone else wants to do something different. I'm happy where I am, but we can.
I mean, I'm not listed on finance and audit, but I've been
That's fine.
I've been a member since I moved back. So, okay. Any other changes? No. So I guess when Beth, did she second it? So we probably still can't vote.
Yeah, we can. We have a majority. We can.
Yeah, only stumps. Okay. Do you have anything you want to add to the committee structure?
Beth, did you have anything you wanted to add?
How did we?
I'm good with,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
good with that.
So we have a motion. We have a second. Is there no more discussion, Mr. DeMarco?
Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Dr. LaFay,
Yes.
Mrs. Henners,
Yes.
Mrs. Mast,
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Chapman.
so item G, strategic priorities. This also came out of the work session with Terry Morgan, and I really like the way she framed it, right? So if we did a full strategic plan redesign right now, the entire conversations from everyone involved would be focused on facilities. So it's probably important that we have board strategic priorities, like she suggested. We work through those while we're starting the work of the master facility planning, and when the timing's right. So not necessarily when we're moving into the new facility, but when we know what direction we're heading, that would be the time to have a larger scale strategic plan development that takes our existing vision, mission, core values, and does that work of what's working now, what do we need to revise. So on here is Ms. Henners kind of captured some of the thoughts at that discussion that we had at the work session. Put that together. That's the page one. Page two, I linked other documents because again, I know in the work session there was some discussion of like, well, we want to be careful. It's not just the five of us speaking, right? It's and deciding what the priorities are. But Terry pointed out, you guys were voted by the residents. You are representing the five of you represent Huron City Schools and set the direction. But also we have these other documents that help, right? So we're not going to just turn a blind eye to the work done in 2015 for the Vision 2020 and the strategic plan. In March of 2022, when the board was preparing for interviews for both my position and Paul's, there was community focus groups, and so that feedback is captured there. When I first met the leadership team in the spring of 22, I asked them what are pride, tradition, and excellence for Huron, and then ultimately what are the hopes and dreams for Huron, and so that list is captured there. In August of 22, we, as a whole staff, both certified, classified, on our first day back, we had up the core values in the gym, and they all gave feedback on define it, what does it look like, define it, and what does it look like in action. And so that's the summary of that results. And then in the work at the November PD with staff, they developed a staff charter, and that was both certified and classified. Yep, that included all our staff in there too. So that all those records kind of are voices or perspectives that could help confirm that what we have here, our mission, engage, equip, empower every student to reach their full potential. Straightforward. aligns with what we have on the window there, engage equipment power. Vision. Together we will ensure a safe learning environment, provide high quality education and experiences, maximize district resources, and serve with compassion and integrity. And our slogan is One Huron / hashtag One Huron. So I think we can discuss it more and refine this, and then that could then look for a motion, but that's John's role. So I guess it's open for discussion.
Thanks. And it's something we can certainly agree that this could be the document that we would like to maybe see on our website, something new and fresh, which I think was the kind of the beginning of this discussion. And then we could continue discussion on that later if something needed to be added to it or revised, so that we have something, we get something fresh out there now. I mean, I'm happy with what I'm looking at. I know there's a lot of other information that Dr. Tapman has given us, but perhaps we can table that for another more lengthy discussion. And if so, my concept would be to make a motion on accepting this.
Would it look exactly like this? Because the only thing that's bothering me is the semicolons and the word "and" in the bullet points. That's
Okay.
a little bit done. I mean, if this is going on our website, I would want it to be edited.
So take the semicolons off at the end and the word "and."
And the word "and" and the period.
Oh, I
Because
see
you have
what you're
bullet
saying.
points and those. It's details. But
No, that's
if
true.
it's representing our whole school on our website.
Should we throw an Oxford comma in there too?
I'm not being sarcastic. So at the end of each bullet, put a period or no periods at all.
No periods.
Okay.
No semicolons. No word "and." That's it.
I just haven't.
First one, right? Okay, does anybody have another opinion in that? Just to,
I think it's short, sweet, to the point.
to me, it's a great start, but doesn't mean we have to stop talking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that-
This really cleans up what we had already.
Is that?
I like it.
Do you think that's
Yeah.
okay?
No, I think it's
So-
helping bridge the past of these to what we're going to go to in the future, which we don't yet know yet. Right.
All right, so I guess we need a motion.
So moved.
I don't even have to say it. Good.
Second.
Any further discussion? I thought not. Mr. DeMarco?
Mrs. Mass,
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Mrs. Sinners,
Yes.
Dr. LaFay, Mr. Jones.
Yes. And thank you, Dr. Tapman, and thank you, Mrs. Sinners, for supplying that for us. Okay, now what you've all been waiting for is executive session. So hopefully I get this right. So would entertain a motion to enter into executive session to consider the evaluation, employment, and compensation of 2 employees, and also to consider the appointment, employment, discipline, and or compensation of another employee. And I'll also add that we anticipate action following the executive session. Yes.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion?
So just to be thoughtful to the audience, do we want to break this up and start with the second item first? If we're coming back to take action, take action.
I discussed that with legal, and this is what they recommended, is that we'll do it at the end of the session, but we can cover everything in one executive session.
We can,
Yes.
but we can also split it apart. I guess I'm just saying for
Well,
the.
We kind of are, as I mentioned.
She needs to have two separate executive sessions.
I'm saying
Oh, no.
start with the second one. I'm just gonna ask the
No, no, no,
board,
no, I'm-
like to put the second item about the appointment of somebody first. Go into executive session, come back, take the action we need to take. When
That's what we were trying to avoid.
Trying
If
to
we-
avoid what?
We can do that at the end of the we can do both things in one executive session and then take motions and action at the end. Why do you see the need?
Just trying to be
So people
considerate
want
of
to
the
wait.
public is here, to not make
Oh,
them wait
well,
for the
I-
entire public, for all
I
of them.
couldn't tell you which things we're gonna take action on.
You made it sound like there was one thing we were gonna discuss, and then there was another thing we were gonna discuss, and the other thing was gonna have action.
No, I just said we anticipate action following the executive session
Okay.
as a whole.
Okay. All right.
Actually trying to make it as neat as possible rather than having to keep coming in and out of executive session.
Trying to be considerate,
people that are here with a specific issue, and to hit their issue first before we talk about the evaluations.
But the evaluation is probably also gonna be action also. That's my point.
Yeah, and executive session, come out for an action quickly and then go back in.
You absolutely can do that.
Yes, we can. I was trying to avoid that. This just basically because of time to try to give everything.
I think we can do that quickly and get these ladies home and then go right back in and not really lose a lot of time. I don't know if we can.
Okay, so now I'm confused because we already had a motion and we had a second on what I stated.
So then we can vote and everybody vote no.
Mr. Marco, that's fine with me.
Mrs. Mast?
No.
Dr. LaFay? Mrs. Hartley?
No.
Mrs. Centers?
No.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Motion fails 4-1.
Can I make a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of, what's your second reason? The appointment of an.
They're both number
Same.
one, but I was directed to
Mhm.
be clear that there are two different subjects. So I wrote to consider the appointment, employment, discipline, or compensation of an employee.
Okay. That.
Okay.
Made a motion.
I second.
Or who made the motion?
Yeah, I did.
Henners, I seconded.
Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Mast?
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley?
Yes.
Dr. LaFay? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
So we're in exec. Are we gonna stay here?
Do we have a
I don't want to
place?
kick people out.
We need to shut the.
And do we have a place that people, if you guys
They
want
wanna wait?
you want to wait? Do we want to move?
Let's move.
To Shawnee Media's move?
Sure.
That was
Let's
quick.
move.
It just avoids conflict with cameras and mics and everything else. What's wrong?
I don't know.